It's on today. We'll be on before that looks like we're on, so don't worry about it. I'll let you know now. All right. It says we're not, but I bet you we are. And we are. Of course we are. Let's record this for posterity to the cloud. Just wanted to hear that sexy voice. All right. Look, there we are. There we are. All right. We're up. We're going. All right. So I think we got it all set. All right. It's Wednesday, so it must be Whiskey Wednesday. Nice crowd here today. Charlie's here, Charlie McRae, who is what are you, the world ambassador for
Universal, not just Earth, but
multi-dimensional.
Multi-dimensional.
Yeah, I like it. I like it.
National brand ambassador.
National brand ambassador. It's not world ambassador.
That's the next step up.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, that's.
I just gave you a promotion. What do you complain about, Charlie? Right? Charlie's here to tell us about Balcones. So, since I have you here, I don't know. Are all you familiar? Has everybody here had Balcones? Okay. Who hasn't had Balcones? Security.
Okay, perfect. This is great.
That's good. That's good, right?
Good, yeah,
that's good. We get some people that haven't had it. The cool part is it's from Texas. In case you didn't know that when you signed up, but tell us a little bit about the sort of like the history about Balcones and why it's so different than everything else we're ever going to taste in our entire life around the world.
Nothing like it. Yeah, Balcones Distilling. 2008, a small group of guys who were really vested in home brew beer making, or like making beer at home. Kind of deviated from their little home brewing group. After falling in love with single malt Scotch, single malt whiskey from around the world, and had this thought of like, man, what if we could actually make single malt whiskey, but like make it here in Texas, and not only pull traditions from all these places and distilleries that we love, but maybe even ground some new traditions here in Texas where we are, and kind of figure out like, hey, what if this thing has legs?
Because Texas climate is pretty much the same as Scotland.
It's awful. It's the worst. You go to Scotland and it's 50 degrees, a little cloudy and everything. Texas, it's like it snowed last Tuesday in Houston where I live, and it was 55 degrees that afternoon. Yeah. I mean, like it is volatile and violent and. Yes, exactly.
And that's just describing the people.
That's not just the drivers. Right. No, that's the actual climate. Yeah. But man, no, we, so, 2008, we decide, okay, let's do this, and so we buy an old welding shop, that's about 2,000 square feet, in the heart of Waco, Texas. And if you don't know where Waco is, if you look at a map of Texas, Austin's here, Dallas is here, Waco is just right there between the two. There's, now there's a ton of things to do in Waco.
It was no man's land.
It was
sort of like that in between.
Like, I mean, you could go to Baylor, you could go to Balcones, or like join the Branch Davidians. That was like all there was to do in Waco.
That's probably was the most famous thing about Waco.
That's the most famous thing.
Was the Branch Davidians.
It was, yeah, it was for sure. But there was nothing going on. I mean, back then it was, I think, like the 19th poorest city in the U.S., and there was just nothing there. But we even still had this dream of making single malt whiskey right there in the heart of Texas. And so got an old Portuguese pot still from overseas, and then just kind of shoehorned our way into this 2,000 square foot welding shop and made a ton of our equipment that we needed because we just didn't have the capital to do much else, and then from there just started churning, started figuring it out, started working. We decided to name ourselves Balcones. We have pulled some Scottish traditions, into our name and our production and things like that. And Balcones, it's a large kind of fault line that runs right through the middle of Texas. And so in taking the Scottish tradition of naming your distillery after a place, as opposed to the American tradition of naming it after a person, we called ourselves Balcones Distilling because the Balcones escarpment runs right up into Waco. And so when the Spaniards came to Texas for the first time, they, go, up through South Texas, and they go in there, they look at balcones, that means balcony in Spanish. That looks like a big balcony that just runs right through the middle of Texas. And so that's why we call ourselves Balcones Distilling, taking that tradition of naming ourselves not after a figurehead, because philosophically, there's not one person that is Balcones. It's a group of people, who
We are Balcones.
we are Balcones. We all have it tattooed on our backs, actually.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's
no,
good.
That's great.
It's a good way to differentiate yourselves.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Just in case we're shirtless at a whiskey event.
That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of where our name came from. Around we started churning whiskey out. Baby Blue was the first whiskey that we ever released. We ventured into corn because at the time we were kind of waiting on some equipment to actually dive into the single malt world,
Okay.
mash tun specifically. We have a very kind of hard and fast belief that we make two styles, the single malt style and the single grain or American style of whiskey, and so we don't hybridize that process to begin with. We have two different types of mills. One for single malt, we have a roller mill for our single malt, a hammer mill for our American grains, our corn and our rye, and then we use a cereal cooker for our American grains and a mash tun for our single malt whiskeys. Just because there are two styles of making whiskey, so why hybridize them? If we want to do the best, at making these things,
right?
We need specialized equipment. So, waiting for that specialized equipment, we dove into the world of corn whiskey and Baby Blue. I mean,
but you were using a very specific, what's the word I'm looking for? A type of corn.
Yeah. So initially it was like Hopi blue corn, like kind of an heirloom corn that we were getting from New Mexico originally. Back a few years ago, we actually realized that our supplier was actually growing in Texas as well. And so we were getting kind of a combo of like New Mexican and Texas grown blue corn. And when we realized that, we're like, can we just get Texas corn? Because the original Texas whiskey should have just Texas grains. And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. So, but yeah, Baby Blue, it ended up
like whatever you would like us to write on the bag. Sure.
Exactly. Yeah, man. You're not going to know the difference. You're not going to eat it raw, so who cares? But no, so, we released Baby Blue in early 2009, and, come to find out that, when you look at the expanse of Texas and specifically whiskey, kind of peaking around the Civil War, there was like a pretty vast, like whiskey history in Texas that was kind of all lost, like fires and floods and bloodshed, which is the title of a book that I read recently about Texas whiskey. Great book.
Well, it's probably one of the only, you got to think about Texas at that probably time. It was probably one of the only potable things liquid you could drink.
Yeah.
I mean,
Texas is not known for having the cleanest water, I should say,
Right.
But no, it's we found out that, kind of after that, the end of Prohibition, when all those Texas distilleries kind of went defunct and just disappeared from the maps, that, there's a 75-year gap where there was zero Texas whiskey available on the market. And you think of Texas and you think, guns and horses and cowboys and cigarettes and whiskey. And it's like, well, everything was there but the whiskey, right? So 2009 comes along and we kind of realize, oh, this is like the first legally sold whiskey since the end of Prohibition. That's, kind of cool. And kind of why we took on the moniker of the original Texas whiskey was because in this modern era of Texas whiskey, we were the first ones to legally sell it. Now you look at, the climate of Texas whiskey, and there's over 30 distilleries that are actively producing now. We have our own little Texas whiskey trail, that we kind of helped curate alongside of a lot of other great distillers there.
Yeah, all ships rise, man.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get everybody to get on board.
Dude, that is like something we hold near and dear. Is like, and the same thing with the American single malt world. Like, rising tides, man. Everyone's got to succeed in this if anyone's going to. But yeah, so we started churning out Baby Blue, and then shortly after that, ventured into the single malt realm. About 2016 or about 2015, we had acquired this old fireproof storage building in Waco, and it was 65,000 square feet, completely just defunct, like just spiders and animals everywhere. And we kind of cleaned it up a little bit and just used it for barrel storage. And at that time, we were just aging in 5-gallon barrels, little small things. And about 2016, we decided, okay, like this, we're going to move full-time production into this facility. So,
okay,
yeah, man, built it out. Got 4 copper pot stills in there. little VC, little visitor center. For a while, we were aging some stuff on the third and fourth floor, but all of
But
that.
even aging is sort of a different type of process with the climate in Texas,
Yeah,
right?
with Texas, yeah, we have our temperature swings are just so vast, man. That's the biggest thing. We'll it soon, I'll just kind of allude to it a little bit, but we'll soon release kind of a study we did where we kind of tested climates, around the U.S. and over in Scotland, just to see like what the effect of climate actually has on whiskey. And we're still kind of pulling through all the results that we kind of came through. But just looking at Texas and seeing like, wow, these barrels in this Texas heat and then these cold snaps just like act as pressure cookers and just like shove this whiskey so deep into the staves, and then a cold snap hits and it just
Pulls it all back
pops
out.
it all back out, man. Just so quick.
Do you have to watch? Do you have to watch when you're pulling the whiskey out of the barrel?
Yeah.
Because you don't want like it to contract so much and you start getting all these wood notes that maybe not as desirable.
Yeah, there's
You have to sort of wait
only
for it to heat up like a little bit too, right?
there's only certain times of the year that we blend certain things because of that reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
because there's certain things that are extracting out of the wood that we're kind of like, we kind of want to avoid that.
Yeah, no,
So,
I get it.
yeah.
I've seen it happen, and I was trying to get somebody to explain it to me because I don't you don't see it that often because you don't deal with that extreme cold except with certain distilleries.
Yeah, certain climates,
Yeah.
and Waco specifically, like Houston's the worst because it's like just hot and humid pretty much all the time. Dallas stays relatively nice, but Waco kind of gets the worst of both, and so it's a pretty unique place to be like aging, maturing whiskey, and we've tried to mitigate, as much as we can by moving from 5 gallon barrels to 53 gallon barrels for a short time, and now we're buying from the wine side of ISC of our cooperage, and aging in 59 gallon barrels now to try and mitigate.
Yeah, what's your angel share loss then?
Dude, it can be 15%.
Wow.
It can be a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be a
All
lot.
right, before they get restless,
Yeah, no.
let's let them start because we're going to start with
Let's.
the well, they already are, but
All the
let's
samples are gone.
yeah,
Cool.
they're empty. Let's go with like actually one of your fairly newer products, which is the pot still.
Yeah, newer-ish. Yeah, we released pot still bourbon for the first time in 2019. This is sort of it's almost kind of a culmination of like everything we've done in the past. We have always been known for the most part doing like 100% grain mash bills. If you look at our single malts, they're all barley, and same with our rye being all rye. And pot still bourbon, we kind of had this thought when we released it that was, everything that we have, hits like a certain price point and up, and we're actually, not able to offer people that like we know and love, things that are like kind of within our price range. Not that this was like the big deciding factor of making this, but it was something that we kind of realized. And so we decided to craft this Texas pot still bourbon with, all the same grains that we use for all of our whiskey. So what you're looking at, kind of nuts and bolts of it, it's the blue corn that we get in Texas, rye, Texas grown rye, Scottish barley, Golden Promise Scottish barley, and then some soft red winter wheat grown in Texas as well. So it's a 4 grain bourbon. Not that we really hang our hat on that. It's just kind of what it happened to turn into.
That's what at the end of the day, it's always what tastes best. So however that
Exactly.
comes out is whatever it comes out.
Yeah, and that's our philosophy when it comes to, especially when we're making pot still bourbon. That was kind of our philosophy, like kind of whatever we have to do to make this happen. Bottled 92 proof, aged for 2 years. But
2 years is sort of a misnomer in Texas
yeah, dude, yeah,
because I mean you get extraction.
You do.
You get a lot of extraction.
you do, yeah, and because 2 years, I mean, I remember, there were days when we were thinking like, wow, this thing hit 2 years, like this thing's going to be an oak bomb, but after through mitigation, barrel size, and that kind of thing, really watching our barrels, we sort of got to the point where we're like, okay, we can push the envelope in some ways with aging here in Texas, figuring out things like in barrel dilution, that kind of thing to kind of help like kind of play with those flavor profiles, I guess you could say, and kind of straighten them out to where we want them to be. So, but yeah, Texas pot still bourbon, corn, rye, barley, wheat, everything grown in Texas except for the barley. 92 proof, 2 years old, straight Texas bourbon.
It sounds almost more like Indian whiskeys. Yeah, because of it's the nature of the climate,
Mm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Where you get a lot of extraction at a
Yeah.
relatively short period of
Short
time.
period of time. Yeah. And the idea that Texas whiskey, because I think this was kind of the line that was towed for a long time, was that, Texas whiskey just ages faster in Texas. And it's like, kind of, maybe, but also kind of not really. I think it's just picking up on certain characteristics of those barrels at different paces than other parts of the world, And
Yeah,
so,
no, listen, like, it's its own beast.
yeah, dude.
It's its own thing. Whether and then you decide when you taste it, do you like it or not?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff that you guys can be in control of. I mean, you can't control the weather, but
Sure.
there's a lot of things you can be in control of that's gonna drastically influence what comes out.
Yeah. And that is our biggest thing. I wouldn't even say challenge. It's like not challenge in a hard way, but it's the thing that we challenge ourselves with the most is like listening to Texas and making the whiskey that Texas wants us to make and that Texas can make,
Right.
instead of fighting the climate and trying to force something out of it, just listening to Texas and just figuring out like, hey, what are y'all trying to tell us here?
Right. All right. So you guys tried the pot still? What do you think? Good.
Solid.
This is under $30.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's a really nice at a time where a lot of people weren't doing something at the 30 that tastes this well.
Yeah.
I think it's a really nice whiskey.
And that was the big thing, a grain to glass Texas bourbon,
Yeah.
for under $30. Like no one else was doing that. And I don't know if anyone else still is, but or is, yeah, but no one else was doing that at the time. So it was a smash hit for us. Yeah, came on
No, I think it shows really well.
Yeah, came our number one seller really quick, really quick.
Yeah.
But
What's the percentage of the wheat?
percentage of the wheats, it's small. It's like maybe around 5-7%. Yeah. Rye is
Tiny.
smallest. Rye's only about 1% of this. Yeah.
The other thing you have to watch out, especially with the hard extraction, is wheat because although it gives you a different mouthfeel, it can let the barrel character show through a little bit more.
Yeah.
And if that starts going towards wood spice, then it's going to show it quicker.
Yeah. No, yeah. Wheat, it'll soften it. Yeah. But it's not an aggressive thing that fights against that
Right.
barrel character. Yeah.
Yeah. Really nice though. I think it's really well
Yeah,
balanced.
man, it's
Really
just-
well balanced.
There's like that kind of appley kind of flavor to
Yeah.
it, that kind of Honeycrisp, taste. Is just, that's what I love most about pot still, just that kind of
What's the ABV on this?
92.
92. Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So we're actually going to go. We went to like where you are now. We're actually going to go back a little bit.
Back. OG.
Let's go back.
OG,
And
baby.
so this is the baby blue.
Baby blue, man.
Baby
Yeah.
blue. That's number 2 on your.
Yeah. Number 2, baby blue. What can I say, man? Yeah. I mean, I know I kind of put the cart before the horse on baby blue a little bit, but yeah. Like I said, this was the first thing that the first whiskey that we ever released, that we ever produced, the original Texas whiskey. 100% roasted blue corn, corn grown in Texas. We actually we send this corn off to a roaster kind of in the northern part of Texas to kind of like barrel roast this and just kind of like heat up that corn and kind of get those enzymes a little bit active and get them pulled out of the
Just
corn a
before
little bit.
popcorn.
Just before. Yeah. Not quite burnt.
We had an accident today, sir. I don't want to tell you what happened to your corn,
Like, good luck trying to.
but I hope you get some butter.
Good luck trying to mill it. Yeah. But yeah, 100% Texas grown and roasted blue corn. Again, we use the American whiskey kind of production line of this with our hammer mill, because corn is obviously a really tough grain, and we've got to really smash it down to some really coarse stuff, or some really fine stuff. But then going into our cereal cooker, fermentation on all of our whiskeys, I know industry standards kind of sits around 72 hours or 72 hours. Yeah. We go 7 days, minimum with our fermentation.
Really?
Yeah, man. Open air fermentation too. We found, and this is actually kind of funny. I think we were doing single malt back a few years ago, and we had forgotten to pitch yeast before everybody left for Christmas break. Came back and like ran tests and saw like, oh, that no one pitched yeast for this, like according to our records, but this is like
It's done.
almost fully fermented.
Yeah, it's done.
And so what we realized was there's a microflora that like grows kind of in the central Texas area called, I think it's Lactobacillus, that actually, doing open air fermentation, like got into that fermenter tank and like brought it to fermentation. And
It's got to be pretty prevalent then, so you're not having problems with different wild yeasts
yeah,
fermenting it then. So it's got to be, it's pretty dominant.
it's
Then.
the dominant one, yeah, in Waco.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. And it's almost kind of the point now where we kind of call it the Waco funk, because like if you taste Balcones, like once you taste Balcones and you know it, like when you taste Balcones again, Balcones, you know that, okay, this is a Balcones product. It's the Waco funk, man.
All right.
It's the lactobacillus.
Yeah, it's a long fermentation like rum.
Yeah.
Get the the lactic fermentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we did rum for a long time, and we would even extend that up to 14 days sometimes, even 21 at times, just to really get those fruit notes coming out.
The esters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, baby blue. This is not trying to hide, behind, is this bourbon? Is it what? Like this is just corn whiskey.
Corn whiskey.
Straight up.
There's nothing wrong with corn whiskey.
No, not at all.
What do you guys think? Has anybody else had any other corn whiskeys? Yeah. Who has not had corn whiskey?
Perfect.
Good.
Congratulations. Your life's about to change, guys.
Why did you do away with the other corn whiskey?
Oh, True Blue.
True Blue.
Yeah. Yeah. True Blue 100. Yeah. A fellow fan. I love it. That was my favorite corn thing that we ever did. True Blue was never like a huge seller for us, I guess is the best way to put it. It just, it was one of those niche things that like we loved, we cared about. We got to the point where we had started our single barrel program.
Marketing stresses,
dude. Exactly. But we got to a point where we had started our single barrel program, and in that we had True Blue cask strength. And, all of that was 2+ year old whiskey. And those barrels just became so popular that we kind of ended up needing all of this juice from True Blue 100 to go into our single barrel program just because the demand was there. And so we just got to a point where, even just looking on a shelf and seeing, 10 different whiskeys of ours, and it's like, okay, should we maybe do a little bit of self-editing here and
right?
Maybe cut back on some things that are
That's a tough thing to do for a
Yeah.
lot of companies too. I mean, we've seen that happen before. Is like the proliferation of what you're offering becomes like, dude, I didn't sign up to have a billboard on my shelf of all your products, because it just gets to the point where, and it gets to the point where the consumer goes, well, which one do I buy?
Yeah. And that was the thing that was in mind, was because, and we would even hear that was, people walking in the store and they're like, I have no idea which one of y'all's whiskeys to buy. And like for us, it's innovation, R&D, like there is no shortage of that. We have just endless questions of, is this possible?
Right.
And so, but then trying to like taper that down a little bit, because like we need to focus, we need to focus on why we're here, what we started this for in the first place. And so that's probably the biggest reason that True Blue kind of
makes sense,
fell away of the dodo a little bit.
What do you guys think of the corn whiskey?
Yeah.
Good.
Butterscotchy.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
A lot of really good cereal notes. Gets a lot of sweetness to it. Really
Intentionally cool. Just a grain forward whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long fermentation maybe dries it out a little bit. Is that what you're thinking? Yeah. Yeah. Really nice.
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah, man.
All right. So now the next one we're going to go into Lineage.
Lineage. Yeah, Lineage. Yeah, man. American single malts, our pride and passion.
You guys pretty psyched about the new rulings?
We're very psyched about the new rulings. Yeah, it's been a long time coming.
For those of you who don't know, the government finally came down on defining what is American single malt.
Yeah.
So there is now a category of American single malt that everybody can either adhere to or vary away from. And then if you can always do American whiskey, which is a sort of that catch-all.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, American single malts, made from 100% malted barley, distilled at one distillery, mashed, fermented, matured in the United States, matured in barrels not to exceed 700 liter, and distilled to 160, bottled at 40%, so 80 proof. Intentionally.
The least amount is 80 proof.
The least amount, yes. Intentionally leaving, kind of leaving as much open because this is a new-ish category. Like people have been making American single malt since what, the 90s, maybe
Yeah.
with McCarthy's, right?
We actually, for those of you who are interested in it, Cousin Vinny went back to our archives and found, we actually did a American single malt symposium here, when we were all discussing what would be American single malt and how this would work. And we have the panel and we have the whole thing. So if you're interested in that and sort of seeing its sort of beginning days of who may be with, there was a lot of diversity of where we were going to go if we were going to allow that category. And it's actually sort of a really good thing if you ever want to see it. I mean, I know Lou Bryson was involved with that. I forgot who we had. We had what? Oh, Jared
Yeah,
was
Jared was there,
from
yeah.
Balcones was here. And then we had Chris Reisbeck was here from Westland at the time. So we had like this really good panel about talking about
future.
Ralph was here
Yeah.
too. I mean, it was great. Yeah. So it's all that's true. Mark Gillespie did record that too.
Oh,
So
nice.
there's a couple different versions out there. But you can definitely go. We just did if you go on to Julio's Facebook page, I believe, and look at the like videos, you should be able to find it because like I said, Vinny just put it back up there.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So if you're feeling a little bit like, you're having some insomnia and you go home and you want to just start watching the symposium, which is like 2 hours long, you might make
go
it
get a
through the
bottle of
first
Lineage
15
upstairs,
minutes,
take it home
15
with you.
minutes into it and fall asleep, but it's great.
But yeah, psyched about the new ruling, man. Very excited about it. Yeah, American single malts. That's why we started the distillery in the first place.
Right.
Was to do single malts.
Just
So,
to get into it
yeah,
finally.
man,
Yeah.
it's what we love. It's what we're after. But so Lineage here. This is kind of we released this for the first time in 2020. And the idea behind Lineage was kind of marrying two traditions of making whiskey, the Scottish tradition with Scottish barley and used barrels, and then the American tradition with American grain and new barrels. In this case, Texas grown barley, which if you know anything about growing barley in Texas, kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It's not the
That's
place.
not conducive
It's not
to
the place
growing
for it.
barley.
But we, alongside working with a university there in Texas, were able to they were actually able to produce some drought resistant, rot resistant barley that grows really well in Texas. And so, pulling some from both traditions and marrying them into one whiskey, that's what Lineage turned out to be. So Texas grown barley, Scottish barley, new and used barrels, aged for 3 years minimum, and bottled at 94 proof. And this is, intended to be, Balcones has always been known for, making pretty big whiskeys,
Yeah. Not for the faint of heart,
not
as
for
they
the
might,
faint, that's a
they
great,
might
great
say.
way to put it. Not for the faint of tongue, yeah, it's sort of wanting to have an easier step into Balcones, and an easy step into American single malts as well, and Texas whiskey, kind of all three categories. Texas whiskey just is also known for being big and bold, but this is more of our nod to the delicacy that whiskey can carry, just kind of universally.
Yeah, you can be sophisticated and delicate too.
Exactly.
There you go.
Exactly. But yeah, man.
What do you think?
Yeah.
Like it? That's
Lineage,
nice.
I have always been a Texas one single malt. Like that's always been my go-to. But Lineage, I just turned 40 last year, and so like I'm getting up in my years as I do. I'm leaning more towards the easier stuff, and Lineage is really, really hitting home for me right now. Yeah.
Good. Nice stuff.
Yeah.
I like that one. All right. So what's up next? So now we're
Texas one, man.
Texas one.
Yes. The gosh, what's the word? Our influence. The reason we started Balcones in the first place was to make this whiskey, Texas one single malt. So, nuts and bolts of this one: 100% Golden Promise Scottish malted barley. This is Golden Promise is kind of what the big hitters use for Scotch production back 60s, 70s, early 80s. 80s whiskey took a dive. Clear spirits became really in vogue, and with that, Golden Promise really fell out of fashion. It's a low yield barley, kind of expensive to produce, and expensive to process, and when we were A-Bing kind of, researching for the distillery, like A-Bing whiskeys from, today, modern day versus their counterparts from 30, 40 years ago,
Right.
it's like it's the same whiskey, but it's like different. It's completely different. And so figuring out like they used Golden Promise, they used a completely different grain back then. We
Well, you got to
realized
remember now it's like, concerto and all this other stuff.
exactly.
And it's producing more alcohol per liter,
Exactly.
liters of alcohol is
Yeah.
the goal.
Yes. And
Golden Promise was not in that sort of realm. And as
yeah.
you use stuff, it sort of falls off anyways. The efficiencies of the grain sort of fall
Yeah.
away as you keep using it. So
Yeah. And efficiency, while I would love to say efficiency and Balcones belong in the same sentence,
they do not.
they don't. Sorry.
They don't.
Copper pot distillation, small batches, not super efficient. Golden Promise, not super efficient, but we hold on to it because we truly believe that it makes the best whiskey that we can possibly make. So found a supplier.
If you're not so concerned about yield
Mhm.
and concerned about quality, it really doesn't make a difference.
Doesn't make a difference, man. Yeah, you're spot on. Found a supplier in Scotland that would actually malt it for us and send it back to us. And so 100% Golden Promise malted barley. This is aged in all new American oak. We've, historically thrown in a sprinkling of maybe French oak, a little bit of Hungarian oak, European oak. Kind of moved away from that. And for all intents and purposes, 100% new American oak. Kind of more on that American tradition of like, bourbon being aged in new barrels, kind of the same thing.
Mhm.
Bottled at 106 proof after being aged for 4 years. Yeah. And this actually, I mean, I just saw a couple bottles of single malt earlier, and I looked on the back 10 years ago. Texas One was 14 months old, and so just thinking back to like, wow, like we were actually achieving this, in this realm of the history of Balcones, but now like kind of look how far we've come, look how much we've been able to, change our process and figure out like, hey, what are these barrels trying to do? What are we trying to change to get what we
How do we
want
get the
to?
longevity? How do we get,
Exactly.
we don't lose everything for Angel share
Exactly. Yeah.
too.
Yeah. The cool
Really,
thing,
now this is Texas big.
yeah.
I mean, this is like big, bold
It
flavors in
is.
this.
Yeah, that new American oak really.
Yeah,
I mean,
this one
shines
says a
through.
message, but it's at the end of a sledgehammer.
Exactly right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, man, this is Texas. I mean, through and through. Just that new American oak shines, man, and it's a big, bold whiskey. It really is. This one it put us on the map back in 2012 when we were invited over to the UK to be a part of the Best in Glass competition. Ended up, long story short, walking away with best whiskey in the world that year, and just this little 2,000 square foot distillery in Waco, Texas.
You couldn't touch this stuff though. You
Dude,
couldn't even find it.
Couldn't find it. I mean, depletion of our inventory was like the biggest issue that we had.
Yeah.
We just couldn't keep up. Figured that out though. Now we have plenty of whiskey. But yeah, put us on the map. Got a great, write up around 2014 in the New York Times. Just essentially said like, why is nobody talking about this distillery? And so we have a lot to be thankful for in that kind of era of Balcones that like, man, we were really producing some great stuff that like people took notice of.
What do you think of this one? Still single malt, but way different, right?
Yeah. Say it one more time. No, barley is all grown in Scotland. Yeah.
This one here is all grown in
All
Scotland.
Scottish barley. Yeah. All grown in Scotland, malted over there, shipped over to us. Yeah.
But you got to remember, they're also, when they're doing it in Scotland, they're also using a grain, a barley varietal that's not widely used in Scotland anymore.
Yeah. It's all but defunct. I think it's used for some beer still.
Yeah, beers,
yeah.
my primary.
Yeah. But yeah, past that, no one's really ventured into it. Maybe a few small places, but
what do you think?
Mess.
Oh, you like it?
Yeah.
I mean, here's one thing that somebody said. Oh yeah, I've had Texas whiskey. It's all the same. I go,
how dare you?
I'm like, what do you mean?
Yeah.
All the same? I mean, it's all from Texas? Yeah, I get that, but flavor varietals. I mean, just in the first 4 we've tried, there's a DNA that runs through this, but
For
it's
sure.
not like I mean, these are very
They're all
different whiskeys.
distinct.
These are all very different whiskeys.
All distinct, man. And no, that's a great way to put it. There is a DNA that runs through all of them, But yeah, all very distinct intentionally. We know that like the consumer's not going to love everything that we do, but chances are like you're probably going to latch onto something that we do, you know. And that I don't think that was intentional at all. It's just kind of what happened, you know.
It's a sort of a natural process.
Yeah.
How you're doing it.
Yeah.
All right. So now Texas rye,
Texas rye, man.
Texas rye.
Texas rye, and sort of updated Texas rye. So we've been doing rye whiskey since 2018. We, you know, it was when we released rye in 2018. It was the first new thing we had released into our core line for 6 years, I think, since like 2012, since we released single malt. And so it was, you know, super exciting for us to, you know, being on the sales side at the time, have something new to sell and something new to talk about. Our previous version of rye whiskey, you know, it was all still 100% rye, 84% of it grown in Texas, in a little town called Denton, which is north of Dallas. And then 16% mixture of some German specialty rye, chocolate rye, crystal rye, caramel rye, just different roasting variants. Bottled at 100 proof and aged for 2 years. And yeah, the biggest thing that people like really latched on to was just this big chocolate characteristic to it. I mean, this thing was just Tootsie Roll with like touch of jalapeno, touch of mint to it. Just, I mean, unlike any rye I've ever had. I don't drink a ton of rye, but unlike anything I had ever had. And it was exciting, you know, and it was received pretty well. People were kind of, you know, caught off guard.
Well, rye wasn't exactly breaking down anybody's door at the time.
Not at the time. No, not around 2018. Kind of started having a day like around COVID, I guess, 2020, when everybody was home, you know, trying new whiskeys, right? But, you know, through, you know, continuing to make rye, continuing to age rye whiskey, we kind of deviated from what we were doing and, you know, wanted to kind of formulate it to where it had a little more consistency to it. And also one thing for Balcones that we really latch onto and have more so recently is sort of locality. And, you know, it's like, hey, if we're going to make whiskey in Texas, like let's keep this as local as we possibly can. And, you know, that's when we started venturing into the Texas grown barley. And, you know, shortly after we ventured into Texas corn. And then so now with our Bottled-in-Bond rye, we've upped that percentage of Texas grown rye to 91%. With just a small 9% mixture of that German specialty rye. And so what this does, and we've, you know, bumped it up to 4 years of aging, still bottled at 100 proof, but, you know, 4 years of aging. And what that's done, it's given, you know, all these notes are still there, like that chocolate component is still there. It's a more consistent version of this roller coaster ride that our previous rye took us on, you know. I really appreciate it as, you know, even someone who doesn't drink a ton of rye, just as a solid, chocolatey, spicy. There's classic characteristics to it, but it still has that Balcones DNA that you're talking about earlier. Yeah.
What do you guys think of this? Do you like this rye? Yeah, it's very different though, right? Yeah. Chocolate malt, you get a little of that patent malt in there.
Yeah.
Yes, Lisa.
A tea with Tootsie Roll.
Tea with Tootsie Roll.
Yeah, the black tea is that's a
black tea.
big note that I latch onto a lot. Yeah, yeah, really do. Spot on.
There is a pepper in there, and there's also a mint.
Yeah. When I drink this rye, I literally picture like a Tootsie Roll with a little mint cut on top with a little jalapeno seed on top of that, kind of served like a little appetizer, right? That's what I picture when I drink this rye. Yeah, and
really
the best thing I can. Oh, go ahead.
Yes, Tim.
Really?
If somebody gave you this and you tasted it, you wouldn't have guessed it was a rye.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, you say that, but I think it's, and I'm going to go off a little bit here. When rye started to become popular, I think a lot of distilleries, what they were doing is we started getting into an area where the differentiation between bourbon and rye started getting really blurred. All right. So if it's going to be 51% corn, it's going to be 51% corn. And then, so you're getting high rye with high rye bourbons. And then you were getting like high corn ryes. And that they were all ranging, like, you know, the difference between the bourbon that somebody was putting out and the rye that somebody was putting out was like 4 or 5 percentage points or 5 percentage points. It was like, you know, 50%, 56% corn, and the rye was 56% rye.
Yep.
So, I mean, you started getting some similarities in taste going across the board. When you start really looking at it and you look at something like Old Patero, that's 100% rye, and they're malting all the rye, you're getting that chocolate, a lot of that chocolate flavor. And a lot of our early ryes that were done in what would be considered craft distilling, those ryes they were experimenting around. We're coming back to it now, where people are doing malted ryes and stuff like that. But that flavor of like chocolate in a rye, what was there at the beginning, went away, and now is sort of coming back a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And we can attribute that for us to that German specialty rye, that chocolate rye, that really heavily roasted rye component. But it's so prominent.
And it's all about basically, cooking it, like roasting it.
Yeah, man. Just roasting it to
Roasting.
the point that it looks like a little piece of chocolate.
Yep.
Yeah. The best thing that I can tell you guys to do with this rye whiskey, and I'm not lying to you, I promise. Gabe Richard, who's our spirits manager at the distillery, one of our blenders, he came up with this cocktail. I call it a cocktail. This is literally just homemade hot chocolate with 2 ounces of this rye in it. I gained probably 10 pounds last Christmas. Just
You didn't stop drinking it, could you?
No, could not. My wife makes the best homemade hot chocolate. We make the best rye whiskey to go into homemade hot chocolate. I'm telling you guys, it stays cold here in Boston for a while, so hot chocolate's like still appropriate. Texas it's 65 today, so it's like hot chocolate's not the move.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you guys will thank me. Yeah.
Coffee base or but the chocolate's nice because it's like a mocha.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. Nice. I like it.
Yeah, man.
I like it.
Fun whiskey.
All right, now we're going way off forward.
Let's get out of here.
We're gonna go to the last whiskey that we're trying tonight,
Yeah.
which is
Brimstone.
Brimstone.
Yeah, man. The quintessential Texas whiskey.
I mean, just as you bring it up to your
I
nose,
know,
like,
dude. Yeah.
damn.
You know exactly what you're getting into.
Yeah.
But you also wonder. No, yeah. So obviously loving, single malt scotch, single malt whiskeys, peated single malts are a big part of that, right? We in this attempt to like not, I guess, copy what everyone, in the Scotch world with, smoking their grains or smoking their whiskeys. Like,
Yeah, but what do you smoke
what's
things
doing-
with in Texas?
I'll tell you. Wait for it, guys. Liquid smoke. Ever heard? No, I'm kidding. No, this is
That's a distinct flavor that once you've had, you'll never forget.
never forget it. Had it once, won't use it again. Yeah. But no, so kind of, this is sort of a nod to like our appreciation, our love for like peated single malts, right? But again, keeping it local, keeping it regional. Brimstone is a corn whiskey. Again, same mash bill as Baby Blue, so it's 100% grown and roasted blue corn, aged at least a day in barrels, in used barrels.
At least a day.
Kind of sort of a wink and nod there, yeah, because a wink and nod to age statements. But yeah, I mean, realistically, it's much older than that. But what we're doing here with Brimstone is we're actually taking the distillate, the new make off the still, and actually smoking the distillate with a proprietary process that we have with Texas scrub oak. So how many have been to Texas before? Okay. How many have been to barbecue joints in Texas? Okay. So the wood that they use, for 99% of the barbecue joints in Texas is Texas scrub oak. Pretty much a trash tree that grows around Texas, but it is very distinct and very specific. So we use Texas scrub oak to smoke the new make for Brimstone, before putting it into barrel. Bottled at 106 proof, so same as Texas one. Again, this is the quintessential Texas whiskey with notes of barbecue, tobacco, like pipe tobacco, leathery, just really smoky and barbecuey.
It's really cool that you're not actually doing the mash bill. Is the grains themselves are not being smoked.
Right. Yeah.
It's actually the distillate,
which
is very different.
Yeah. When when I started with Balcones, it was, you guys, we can either tell you, we'd have to swear you to secrecy kind of things, or we just don't tell you, and you just don't know. And I was like, just don't tell me, I don't want to know. Let's keep some of the secrets, some of the mystery alive, with Brimstone. I feel like I figured it out, but then every time I feel like I figured it out, I haven't figured it out. So
Now, what do you think? This is really different,
Yeah, right.
right? Very different, right? Just that sort of almost. It's not mesquite though, because some people go, "Oh, it's mesquite." I go, "No, not really." I mean, that's got a very different flavor, and that's actually more of a smoky flavor
Yeah,
than this.
yeah.
This,
Mesquite, I feel like is a sort of like a drier smoke
like
almost.
yeah, this is definitely different than that.
Yeah, Texas
There's a
Grill.
little like an acrid sort of flavor to it too, not in a bad way.
Sure. Yeah.
But you sort of get that, and it's not an overwhelming. Mesquite, I think, can be overwhelming.
Sure.
This is not overwhelming. This is sort of complimentary.
And I think smoking
too.
the distillate too, as opposed to the grains,
May
helps
with that.
Helps with that. Yeah, it's because you
Really
don't get
good.
the sweetness from the distillate from the corn.
Right.
Married with
Doesn't wipe it out.
Yeah.
Really cool.
Yeah, man.
And have you ever had it? Have you just out of curiosity, have you ever had that right after it was smoked before it was put in the barrel, the distillate?
I have not.
You need to do
I
that.
should
mean,
do
why
that.
wouldn't you do that?
I don't know. I don't live in Waco.
You need to
Waco's
send
like
us.
3 hours away
You
from
need
me.
to send us some.
Gosh, dude. Okay, done deal.
We need to try that because I want to see how the what the barrel is doing
influence,
to
yeah.
it. I want to see what it tastes like as it's going in.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's an interesting sort of like it might be good, it might be bad. I don't know.
No, of course.
I mean, it might need that barrel to sort of mellow it out.
Soften it up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I want to see.
Yeah.
Now I'm curious.
Man, now I'm curious. Jeez.
I need new make, smoke, and then smoked new make.
It's going to be a gift set.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes. Somebody in the back has a question. I don't know who it is. Oh, yeah, it's Lisa. What's up?
Oh, yeah.
She sees a small amount of this doing really interesting things in a cocktail.
Yeah. Big time. Espresso martini. I mean, it's spot on with an espresso martini. It just adds this layer of smoke, obviously, to that kind of coffee, situation. And if you're like a French roast person and you really like your beans, like really smoky, it's a really great compliment to it. But also like the classics, like your old fashions. Like when I was on the sales side, the best selling cocktail I ever had was the Impostorita, which is a margarita with baby blue that we kind of developed there in Waco. But then past that was, a Brimstone old fashioned,
Right.
because it saved, a big part was it saved a step from like smoking the old fashioned with
Right, yeah.
caffeine, right? I was like, hey, what if I gave you something that you could avoid that step, and they're like, great, love it. Yeah. Yeah, it does well in classics, but the espresso martini is kind of the spot on move.
Brimstone and Moxie, I don't know. Now, I will say Brimstone and Moxie, I'm not too sure about because I don't want to screw around with the Moxie too much. You know how good that tastes. But I will tell you, I wouldn't mind trying Moxie and Rye with the Texas Rye.
Ooh.
Do you know what Moxie is?
I'm not familiar with Moxie at all.
So Moxie is a friend of mine put it the best way possible, I think, is a carbonated Amaro.
Oh, I love that.
All right, so it's a really herbal, like almost the Italian soda, that sort of thing. So it's in the realm of like the whole root sort of sodas like root beer, birch beer, sarsaparilla. It's in that. Only it tastes way worse. But
Perfect, love it.
But
the wheels are churning.
the
up
wheels
here,
are churning. But I will tell you, if you and it is an old New England drink, and I'm trying to convince people of this time and time again, is a Moxie and Rye goes very, very well together.
Okay, I mean I can see it. If
So-
it's anything like Amaro, or if it's like a carbonated Amaro,
Yeah, it goes great.
You're talking black.
So then I would Steve, I would put the Rye with the Moxie. I don't know if the flavors would conflict a little too much with the Brimstone. Although it is probably still a drink from hell. So it may work. It may work.
to your worst
It
enemy.
may work.
Oh
That's-
gosh.
No, I'm no Malort. No
Get outta here
Malort.
with
No
Malort,
Malort.
yeah.
Malort. Charlie, I want to thank you very much for
Dude,
coming and
of
showing
course.
us
Thank you,
today.
man.
Thank you, everybody,
Great to be back. Yeah,
for being
great
here
back.
for Whiskey Wednesday.
Thanks.
All right, I'm gonna say goodbye to all the people on Facebook. It was awesome. You should have been here. This also becomes a podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, look for it. It's the Liquor Talking, and Cousin Vinny will get that out there probably tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that, especially if you're having insomnia. It's really good to do. So thanks everybody, and you all stay here.